Hello everyone. In this class, we will study the chapter The Muse in the Machine by John Thornhill. About the author, John Thornhill is a London-based writer who works as innovation editor for the Financial Times. He writes regularly on the impact of technology in a critical manner. Thornhill is also the founder of the FT 125 Forum, a training hub for senior business executives on related topics. His podcast Tech Tonic is popular, where he discusses a multitude of topics on technology. To generally heroically, the entire arc of world literature can be summarized as follows: writing about gods, then kings and queens, then ordinary people, and finally ourselves. But having exhaustively explored the divine and almost every dimension of the human, we are plunging deeper into a new era of literary history, writing about machines, and that may even precedes the most startling evolution of all, machines writing about human and perhaps one day machines writing about machines. Literature, sometimes described as crystallized emotion, contain the very essence of the human experience. So what will it mean when machine intelligence trespasses into human territory? Will it open up exciting new vistas of understanding and insight, or will it only highlight our own diminishment in the cosmic scheme of things? Almost every day brings a startling new advance in the field of artificial intelligence (AI), the seemingly magical general purpose technology of our times. In 1997, the world was stunned when IBM's Deep Blue was Deep Blue computer beat the greatest chess player of all time, Gary Kasparov. Parov. Although impressive in its way, Deep Blue was little more than an immensely powerful rules-based calculating machine, a $10 million alarm clock. In Kasparov's irritable phrase, but more recent advances in deep learning techniques combined with an explosion of data from our smartphones and computers and massive increases in computing power have enabled machine learning programs to perform an increasing array of tasks as well as, if not better than, any human. Interpreting radiology scans, flying aircraft, identifying images and recognizing speech. Just ask Siri. Google DeepMind defeat of two of the best players of the ancient and fiendishly complex. Chinese game of Go in 2016 and 2017 also captivated a global audience. Using a very different technique from Deep Blue, AlphaGo's success stemmed from learning by itself, defying 2,500 years of accepted wisdom about the game. Little wonder that some Chinese researchers called this a Sputnik movement for the country, stimulating a massive increase in spending on AI amid talk of a new technological arms race. All this buzz about AI has also sparked the imagination of some of our most inventive novelists, among them Jeanette Winterson and Ian MC1. Once the exclusive preserves of science fiction thinking robots have now entered the literary mainstream. MC1's most recent muse is none other than Demis Hassabis, the luminous founder of Google DeepMind. The Demis Hassabis, the luminous founder of Google DeepMind. Google DeepMind. And this latest fascination with AI is that it reframes the eternal debate about what it means to be a human, challenging our conceptions of identity, creativity, and consciousness. AI is both the apotheosis of the rational, scientific thought of the Enlightenment and possibly its damnation too. Are we approaching the day the Israeli Historian Yuval Noah Harari has asked when computers will know us better than we know ourselves. I.J. Good, the mathematician who worked alongside Alan Turing in the code-breaking team at Bletchley Park during the Second World War and was a pioneer of AI, was one of the first to grasp the full significance of an intelligence explosion. Once ultra-intelligent machines surpassed the intelligence level of humans, he wrote, then they themselves would be able to invent even better machines, leaving us far behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make, provided that a machine is docile enough to tell us how to keep it under control. He wrote in 1965, the moment of technological singularity, should it ever happen, has been compared with the creation of a new life form, elevating Homo sapiens to sit alongside God. Unarguably, it would be the most significant event in 3 lakh years of human history. According to the scientist, writer James Lovelock, it would also signify the end of the 300-year Anthropocene age. James Lovelock. It would also signify the end of 300-year Anthropocene age, during which Homo sapiens has wielded planet-changing technologies and the arrival of Novacene, the age of hyper-intelligent machines. In this view, we will be swept away in an avalanche of algorithms sliding towards a post-human future in which we are likely to have as little understanding of electronic life forms as polar bears have of snow plugs. Even before the age of AI, humans have been fascinated by artificial creations that combine to life. In ancient Greek mythology, Pygmalion created Galatea, a beautiful ivory statue that was animated by Aphrodite and became his wife. In Jewish folklore, the golem was an amorphous lump of clay that was brought to life by humans. Czech playwright Karel Čapek wrote about a factory that manufactured artificial workers. In RD, you are popularizing the word robot after his play was staged in America in 1922, and perhaps most famously of all, Mary Shelley wrote a Gothic horror in 1816 about how Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant young scientist, created a hideous, out-of-control monster from body parts discarded from the dissecting room and the slaughterhouse. It was this literary masterpiece that inspired Winterson to write her latest novel, Frankenstein, interweaving Shelley's experience with a love story set in Brexit era Britain, in which a young transgender doctor called Rai, very described as future early, falls for a mysterious Professor Victor Stein, who is naturally an AI expert. This story is an invention that sits inside another invention, reality itself, Winterson writes. In an interview with the BBC, the author described Shelley's original tale as a message in a bottle that can only now be fully understood 2000 years after it was written, just as the 19th century mathematician Ada Lovelace wrote code for a computer that had not yet been built. Shelley was anticipating a world that not yet been created. These women were really looking past the present, jumping forward into a future that did not yet exist. She said, for Winterson, who has movingly explored the nature of her own individuality and sexuality in is her memoir. Why be happy when you could be normal? The dawn of the AI age is something to be welcomed, even cherished. The great thing about AI, if we ever do it, is how can you worry about gender? Whether you love a man if you are a man, whether you love a woman if you are a woman. When we are about to share the planet with self created, non biological life forms which will not have a gender, This could change everything. I love this, she told the BBC. But many other writers, including MC1, have a far more ambiguous and darker view of the emergence of humanoid robots, the visible embodiment of AI. In his novel Machines Like Me, MC1 tells the story of Charlie, a happy-go-lucky drifter who buys one of the first synthetic humans. Adam, as he is the tellingly named, was advertised as a companion and intellectual sparring partner, friend, and factotum who could wash dishes, make beds, and think. He was also capable of sex and possessed functional mucous membranes, in the maintenance of which he consumed half a liter of water each day. Before us sat the ultimate plaything, the dream of ages, the triumph of humanism, or its angel of death, exciting beyond measure, but frustrating too. Although it is not supposed to happen according to the instruction manual, Adam proceeds to fall in love with Charlie's girlfriend, Miranda, and even starts writing her poems, some 2000 Holkers in all. Or does Adam actually fall in love? Can a robot ever become truly conscious and express emotions? Cue a couple of thousand years of philosophical disputation on the nature of consciousness. Charlie, though, appeared to be of the quacking duck school of philosophy. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. Or as Charlie puts it, if he, Adam, looks and sounds and behaves like a person, then as far as I am concerned, that what he is. For MC1, the onward march of science spells the retreat of human self-regard, a series of demotions leading to extinction. Once humans were at the center of the universe, with the sun and planets turning around us in an ageless dance of worship. Then heartless astronomy reduced us to an orbiting planet around the sun, just one among many other rocks. Humans, too, still clung to the conceit that they remained brilliantly unique, appointed by the Creator to be lords of everything that lived. But then soulless biology confirmed that we are little different from the other creatures, sharing common ancestry with bacteria, pansies, trout, and sheep. Our last redoubt was consciousness, but even here we are likely to prove helpless accomplices in our own self abnegation. The mind that had once rebelled against the gods was about to dethrone itself by way to its own fabulous reach. In the compressed version, we would devise a machine a little cleverer than ourselves, then set that machine to invert another that lay beyond our comprehension. What need then of us? Here the echoes from I.J. Good's intelligence explosion. Many AI experts reading these novels would surely say that the authors are letting their imaginations run way away ahead of themselves. The success of Google DeepMind in creating neural networks to defeat one of the strongest Go players in history may be a remarkable achievement, but that does not herald the imminent arrival of an omnipotent new life form. Machine learning programs may be becoming exceptionally good in many narrow domains, but they are still comically weak in terms of general intelligence. After all, modern robots rather like the machine hybrid Daleks in the TV show Doctor Who, still find it hard to climb the stairs. Alicia Gopnik, a development psychologist at the University of California, Berkeley and an expert in the theory of mind, argues that natural stupidity will continue to pose a far greater danger to humanity than AI for the foreseeable future. There is not much basis for either the apocalyptic or the utopian vision of else AIs replacing humans until we solve the basic paradox of learning. The best artificial intelligence will be unable to compete with the average human 4-year-old. She writes Impossible Minds, a collection of essays on AI by many of the world's leading experts. Still, machine learning is continuing to make great strides in many narrow areas, including writing. Some AI programs are already writing news reports for major US agencies. Bloomberg News says that Almost one third of its content is written with the help of robot reporters. The system it uses, known as Cyborg, can pull the essential facts out of routine financial statements and write basic news stories in double quick time. The irony is that many of these computational news reports are also read by robots linked to automated financial market trading program. Important information is already being extracted, analyzed, reported, and read with almost no human intervention. We are already beginning to write ourselves out of the script, but the severe limitation of literary AI have also been highlighted by an intriguing project in 2017 conducted by Ross Goodwin, who describes himself as a creative technologist and Gonzo data scientist in an attempt to emulate the great road trip novel of Jack Kerouac. Goodwin drove from New York to New Orleans, collecting data from a camera, a microphone, a computer clock, and GPS. Those data were left when they were then fed into a neural network that had machine read hundreds of books to spot literary patterns out, spewed a real-time novel. The novel opening sentence certainly has some resonance. It was 9/7 in the morning, and the house was heavy, but the overall result, according to Brian Merchant, the Atlantic magazine writer who followed the experiment, was like Tom Wolfe's electric cool acid test meets Google Street View, narrated by Cyril Crow. It was not. No matter how we laugh at robotic failings today, we should still marvel at how fast AI has developed over the past decade and wonder how far it may yet evolve. We flatter ourselves that electronic intelligence will always take shape in humanoid robots, such as McEwan Adam, but it is far more likely to develop in dissiminoid forms that we can scarcely comprehend. Few scientists writers have a longer perspective than Lovelock, author of Novasin, who has just celebrated his 100th birthday, the originator of the Gaia theory, which argues that the Earth is a single system of living organisms and inorganic surroundings. Lovelock believes it is only a matter of time before we hand the gift of knowing on to new forms of intelligent beings. At 4.5 billion years of age, Earth is estimated to be halfway through its existence. At some point before our sun burns itself out, it seems certain that electronic intelligence will supersede the humankind, he argues. If we are lucky, humans might provide entertainment for what he calls the cyborgs, just as flowers and pets delight us today. But Lovelock urges us not to be depressed. We have played our own astonishing role in the history of the cosmos and have enjoyed our time in the sun, just as we do not mourn the passing of our ancestor species. Neither, I imagine, will cyborgs, the grief stricken by the passing of humans. If we are to take any consolation, he suggests it is to come from the word of Alfred Tennyson poem on Ulysses as the great barrier and explorer slipped into old age. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are. Maybe cyborgs will still write novels or for fun about humans, or if they see the need, they may even write books about the internal lives of machine. The only trouble is that we humans would not be able to read them, still less understand. The conclusion is this essay is a thought-provoking piece of writing that makes us wonder about what the future might be like and whether humans will actually be a part of it. Where a few years ago we are just entering into the age of smartphones, today we are at a stage where they have almost become a necessity for survival in this technological age. There is no doubt that artificial intelligence has been very useful and will continue to make life easier for us, especially if we create ultra intelligent robots. Will responsible uses of technology can solve a lot of our problems. we have to ask ourselves about the direction of our dependence on it is taking us. The literature contains the very essence of the human experience. IBM's Deep Blue computer beat the greatest chess player of all time, Gary Kasparov. Who is the founder of Google DeepMind? Davis Hassabis. Yes, Davis Hassabis. Which TV series film features Dalex, the machine hybrid that finds it hard to climb the stairs? Doctor Who. Lovelock was the originator of the Gaia theory. Provide a brief biography of John Thornhill. John Thornhill, 14 July to 28 January 1875, was an English first-class cricketer and clergyman. He was born in Hemmingford. John Thornhill was first-class cricketer and clergyman, born in Hemmingford Green. Hunting Donshire. Donshire. In July 1815, his father was the statesman George Thornhill. George Thornhill. After completing his education at Rugby School, he attended Cambridge St. John College. Following his graduation from Cambridge, he entered the Anglican Church and was consecrated as a deacon in Durham Cathedral in 1838. In 1839, he was appointed reverend at Boxworth in Cambridgeshire, which was its first ecu- ecu- ecclesiastical job. First ecclesiastical ecclesiastical job. Charles and George Thornhill, Thornhill's brothers, were both first-class cricket players. In 1814 and 1842, Thornhill participated in two first-class matches at Cambridge University for the Marylebone Cricket Club. In his two games, he scored 19 runs, his highest being an 8. He served as the Reverend of Childrenly, Childly, Childerley, a hamlet located south of Boxworth, England, starting in 1850. In addition, Thornhill served as the Cambridgeshire Judge of the Peace. He passed away in January 1875 at Boxworth. The son of Joseph and Elizabeth Thornhill was John Thornhill, one of the most celebrated mechanics in this or any other state, particularly distinguished for his abilities as an architect. At Christ Church in 1741, he married Jane Cook, who gave birth to Joseph Thornhill. The following year, he is listed as a witness to the will of William Russell, a carpenter in 1746, as the executor of the painter John Winkle's estate in 1748, and as the person who carried out the inventory of the carpenter Andrew Joly estate in 1753. Thornhill, a long-time city resident of Mulberry Ward, was chosen to become a member of the Carpenters Company before the first extant documents were created. He was chosen in 1763 to serve on both the crucial committee to set prices and the committee tasked with findings on a site for the future Carpenters Hall. He made one of the biggest contributions to the hall's building in 1770. He was chosen to be the company's assistant in 1776, and he continued to serve on committees until 1781. Almost nothing is known about the work of colonial master builders like John Thornhill. Despite his clear importance, this is often the case. In 1741, Thornhill was invited to take over the construction of the new spire that was about to be built at Christ Church. As a parishioner, Thornhill would cheerfully serve the church, but he was not experienced in that kind of job and would want assistance from other craftsmen as stated by the building committee. Thornhill received compensation for his work at Christ Church between 1746 and 1763, including a final steeple account in 1759. Thornhill was also requested to measure the construction of Clevedon 1767 by Jacob Noll. Summarize the essay Muse in the Machine by John Thornhill. The article The Muse in the Machine by John Thornhill delves into the significant impact that muses have had on musical innovations across time. He explores the idea of muses as heavily sources of inspiration, examining their origins in mythology and their function in fostering artistic expression in artists and composers, from the Greek muses to modern interpretation in a variety of musical genres. He explores the ways in which muses have been viewed differently across history and culture. He suggests that the muse connects musicians to something greater than themselves by highlighting the mystical and transcendent aspect of the muse influence on musical composition. In summary, Hill makes the case that the muse is still a potent and timeless metaphor in the music industry, as inspiring creators to produce new works. Heroically speaking, the whole literary arc of the universe can be summed up as follows: writing about gods, kings, and queens, common people, and eventually ourselves. But now that we have truly examined the divine and nearly even every aspect of the human condition, we are delving further into a brand new period of literary history, the writing of machines. It could even portend the most astonishing evolution of all: machines penning about people, and maybe in the future, machines penning about machines. Literature captures the core of the human experience and has been described as crystallized emotion at times. What will happen then if artificial intelligence intrudes on human domain? Will it lead to fascinating new insights and understandings, or will it only serve to emphasize how small we are in the grand scheme of things? Artificial intelligence, AI, is the supposedly magical general purpose technology of our age. and it advances shockingly fast almost every day. When IBM Deep Blue Deep Blue Deep Blue computer defeated the greatest chess player of all time, Gary Kasparov, defeated Gary Kasparov in 1997. It startled the world. True, striking in its own right, Deep Blue was really nothing more than an incredibly potent ruler-based calculator. $10 million alarm clock. To use Kasparov's venomous term, जॉन थॉर्नहिल का लेख द म्यूज इन मशीन उस महत्वपूर्ण प्रभाव पर प्रकाश डालता है जो म्यूज ने समय समय पर संगीत नवाचार पर डाला है। वह प्रेरणा के स्वर्गीय स्रोतों के रूप में म्यूज के विचार की पड़ताल करते हैं। पौराणिक कथाओं में उनकी उत्पत्ति और कलाकारों और संगीतकारों में कलात्मक अभिव्यक्ति को बढ़ावा देने में उनके कार्यों की जांच करते हैं। ग्रीक म्यूज से लेकर विभिन्न संगीत शैलियों में आधुनिक व्याख्याओं तक हिल उन तरीकों की खोज करता है जिनमें म्यूज को इतिहास और संस्कृत में अलग अलग तरीके से देखा गया है। उनका सुझाव है कि म्यूज के प्रभाव के रहस्यमय और उत्कृष्ट पहलू को उजागर करके म्यूज संगीतकारों को खुद से कहीं बड़ी किसी चीज से जोड़ता है। संगीत रचना संपेक्ष में हिल का कहना है कि संगीत उद्योग में म्यूज अभी भी एक शक्तिशाली और कलातीत रूपक है जो रचनाकारों को नए काम करने के लिए प्रेरित करता है। वीरतापूर्वक बोलते हुए ब्रह्मांड के संपूर्ण साहित्यिक चक्र को इस प्रकार संक्षिप्त किया जा सकता है: देवताओं, राजाओं और रानियों, आम लोगों और अंततः स्वयं के बारे में लिखना। लेकिन अब जब हमने दैवीय और मानव स्थिति के लगभग हर पहलू की पूरी तरह से जांच कर ली है, तो हम साहित्यिक इतिहास के एक बिल्कुल नए युग में आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। मशीनों का लेखन यह सभी के सबसे आश्चर्यजनक विकास को भी चित्रित कर सकता है। मशीनें लोगों के बारे में लिख रही है और शायद भविष्य में मशीनें मशीनों के बारे में लिख रही है। साहित्य मानवीय अनुभव के मूल को पकड़ता है और कई बार इसे क्रिस्टलीकृत भावना के रूप में वर्णित किया गया है। तो फिर यदि कृत्रिम बुद्धिमत्ता मानव क्षेत्र में घुसपैठ कर दे तो क्या होगा? क्या इससे आकर्षक नई अंतर्दृष्टि और समझ पैदा होगी, या क्या यह केवल इस बात पर जोर देने का काम करेगा कि हम चीजों की भव्य योजना में कितने छोटे हैं? कृत्रिम बुद्धिमत्ता एआई कथित तौर पर जादुई है, हमारे युग की सामान्य प्रौद्योगिकी, और यह लगभग हर दिन आश्चर्यजनक रूप से तेजी से आगे बढ़ती है। जब 1997 में आईबीएम के डीप ब्लू कंप्यूटर ने स्वर्णकालिक महान शतरंज खिलाड़ी गैरी कैस्पारोव को हरा दिया तो इसने दुनिया को चौंका दिया। हालांकि अपने आप में प्रभावशाली डीप ब्लू वास्तव में एक अविश्वसनीय रूप से शक्तिशाली नियम आधारित कैलकुलेटर से ज्यादा कुछ नहीं था। कास्परोव के जहरीले शब्द का उपयोग करने के लिए $10 मिलियन अलार्म घड़ी Write a critical appreciation of the Muse in the Machine by John Thornhill. Or how does John Thornhill define the concept of the Muse in the context of music, and what historical precedents does he draw upon? According to John Thornhill, the Muse is a source of heavenly or inspirational influence that inspires composers and musicians to be creative. He mostly takes historical examples from Greek mythology, where muses were goddesses in charge of music and other arts and sciences. Greek mythology identified 9 muses, each of whom served as expressions for a distinct artistic medium. According to Hill, these muses serve as a bridge between the heavenly and the human world, providing artists with inspirations and direction. He investigates how societal conceptions of creativity and artistic brilliance have been shaped by the persistence of the belief in muses across history. He also looks at how the idea of the muse has been modified and understood in musical traditions and cultural contexts outside of ancient Greece. He might talk about how various myths views view muses or how contemporary musicians and composers understand inspirations and creativity in respect to earlier muses related beliefs. In general, Hill's description of the muse in music takes into account both its legendary beginning, its continuing relevance as a representation of creative inspiration throughout history and society. In a heroic sense, the whole trajectory of world literature might be summed up as follows: writing about gods, followed by kings and queens, common people, and eventually ourselves. But now that we have truly examined the divine and nearly every aspect of the human condition, we are delving farther into a brand new period of literary history. The writing of machines, it could even portend the most astonishing evolution of all, machine penning about people, and maybe in the future machines penning about machines. Literature captures the core of the human experience and has been described as crystallized emotion at times. What will happen then if artificial intelligence introduced on human domain? Will it lead to fascinating new insights and understanding, or will it only serve to emphasize how small we are in the grand scheme of things? Artificial intelligence (AI) is the supposedly magical general purpose technology of our age, and it advances shockingly new almost every day. When IBM Deep Blue computer defeated the greatest chess player of all time, Garry Kasparov, in 1997, it startled the world. Through striking in its own right, Deep Blue was really nothing more than an incredibly potent rules-based calculator, a $10 million alarm clock, to use Kasparov's venomous term. However, more recent developments in deep learning techniques, along with an explosion of data from our computers and smartphones and massive gains in processing power, have made machine learning programs capable of performing an increasing number of tasks on par with, if not better than, human performance, including reading radiology scans, piloting airplanes, identifying images, and recognizing speech. A worldwide audience was enthralled with Google DeepMind's victory against two of the top players in the age-old, insanely difficult Chinese game of Go in 2016 and 2017. AlphaGo broke 2005 years ago of conventional thinking about the game by learning on its own, employing a drastically different strategy than Deep Blue. It makes sense that some Chinese experts refer to this as the nation's Sputnik movement, as it led to a sharp rise in AI spending and discussions of a new arms race in technology. The increased talk about AI, artificial intelligence, has also stimulated the creative minds of some of our best-selling authors, including Ian McEwan and Janet Winterson. And Janet Winterson. Thoughtful robots, once limited by science fiction, are now commonplace in literature. The brilliant founder of Google DeepMind, Demis Google DeepMind, Demis Demis Hassabis, Demis Hassabis is MC Evans' most recent inspirations. The most recent obsession with AI is how it challenges our ideas of identity, creativity, and consciousness, redefining the age-old argument about what it means to be human. AI represents the pinnacle of enlightenment, logical science, as well as its potential demise. The Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari has questioned if the time will come when computers will understand humanity more fully than we do. I.G. Good, a mathematician and AI pioneer who collaborated with Alan Turing on the code-breaking team at Bletchley Park during World War II, was among the first to fully understand the meaning of intelligence explosion. He wrote that once ultra-intelligent computers outperform human intellectually, they would be able to create ever more advanced machines, considerably humans in the process, outpacing humans in the process. So as long as the machine is submissive enough to instruct us on how to maintain control, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man needs to ever make. He wrote in 1965. If we and if and when technological singularity occurs, it has been likened to the emergence of a brand new life form that will elevate humans to its status of deities. It would, without a double doubt, be the biggest thing to happen to humans in 3 lakh years. The scientific writer James Lovelock believes it would also herald the beginning of the hyper-intelligent machine age known as the Novacine at the end of 300 three, and the end of the 300 year Anthropocene, during which Homo sapiens has used technologies to create planets. According to this perspective, human will be carried away by an algorithm avalanche and will live in a post-human world where our knowledge of electronic life forms will probably be limited to what polar bears know about snow plugs. In particular, John Thornhill's examination of the idea of the muse and his study and observation in the muse in the music. The muse in music provide a substantial contribution to our knowledge of inspiration and creativity in music. Traditional ideas that creativity is the only result of human intellect or technical talent are challenged by Hill's study of the muse. Rather, he highlights the muse as a transcendent inspiration source, emphasizing on cultural influences and outside factors shape musical creation. Scholars and artists alike are encouraged by this revaluation to take into account larger context and cooperative procedures in the making of music. Hill's research connects old mythological characters with modern musical interpretation by integrating cultural historical perspective on the muse. He contributes to our understanding of how artistic inspirations has been viewed and valued throughout history by charting the muse development across various historical periods and cultural contexts. An increasingly comprehensive understanding of the cultural factors influencing musical creation is fostered by this multidisciplinary approach through the inclusion of philosophical, psychological, and social aspect of creativity in addition to technical study. Hill's findings have had a major influence on musicological debate. His research challenges academics to think about how practices, interpretation, and reception of music across a variety of musical traditions and genres are impacted by ideas about music and inspiration. Research collaborations involving musicology, cultural studies, mythology, psychology, and philosophy are encouraged by the examination of muses in music. Through Hill's approach, academics are encouraged to investigate the relationships among creative expression, mythological narratives, and human creativity. This can lead to new directions in his research and interdisciplinary discussions. Musicians and composers are prompted by Hill's studies to consider their own creativity, identities, and processes in connection to the idea of the muse. Through examining the ways in which external factors and cultural settings impact artistic creation, artists acquire a more profound comprehension of their functions as interpreters and trailblazers within wider cultural structures. In conversation regarding inspiration and originality in music today, Hill's observations are still pertinent, especially in light of how globalization and technology improvement are changing artistic practices. His study promotes continuing discussion regarding the nature of creative inspiration and how it relates to musical innovation, cultural diversity, and music continued existence as an expressive art form. John Thornhill research in the muse in the machine integrates cultural settings, encourages multidisciplinary inquiry, and broadens viewpoints to make a substantial impact on our understanding of creativity and inspiration in music. His work accentuates the timeless significance of mythological ideas informing musical expression and identity, improves scholarly conversation, and encourages critical thinking among scholars and musicians. Discuss the significance of muses in ancient mythology, their evolution into modern interpretation in music as discussed by Hill. John Thornhill examines the role of muses in classical mythology, role of muses and how they evolved into contemporary musical interpretations in The Muse in Machine, emphasizing a number of important points. According to Hill, muses were reverent as celestial entities in Greek mythology, representing the arts and sciences. Each of the nine muses was in charge of spawning a particular creative and or intellectual project. For instance, Euterpe was the muse of music, and Calliope was the muse of epic poetry. It was thought that musicians, poets, and artists were guided and inspired by the muses. They were seen as go between the world and of the living and the world of the dead, bestowing abilities and creativity upon the people they choose. The idea emphasizes new now mysteries, how mysterious and transcendent creative inspiration is. Hill shows how the idea of muses has changed over time and been incorporated into contemporary musical interpretations. Modern views of the muse frequently see her as an abstract, as metaphorical force that stimulates creative expression, whereas the ancient muses were personified as deities. The muse is a symbol of for the expression that inspires composers and musicians to create in modern music. The muse is an inspiration for creative expression and invention, whether it be a person, an idea, a location, or an emotion. Hill might examine how the idea of the muse has societal and psychological resonance. In addition to having an impact on artistic creativity, it symbolizes both the belief in occult influences influencing artistic works and humanity, never-ending search for inspiration and enlightenment. All things considered, Hill's analysis of muses in classical mythology and how they are developed into contemporary musical interpretation highlights their timeless value as metaphors for inspiration and creativity throughout many historical eras and cultural contexts. Within Greco-Roman religion and mythology, the term muse refers to any of a group of mysterious but ancient sister deities, the main focus of whose adoration being Mount Helicon in Boeotia, Greece. In Pieria, at the base of Mount Olympus, they were born. Their cult is very poorly known, but they had a contest musea in singing and playing, and they held a festival every 4 years in Thespia near Helicon. They most likely began as the patron good goddesses of poets, who in the past were also musicians and provided their own accompaniments. However, at some point in the past, their influence spread to all branches of the liberal arts and sciences, which explains why they are associated with organizations like the the Muses seat in Alexandria, Egypt. As early as Odyssey, there were nine muses, and Homer occasionally calls upon one or all of the muses. The Muse were most likely one of those nebulous groups of gods lacking distinction among themselves that are typical of some, most likely ancient layers of Greek religion. Differentiation, which has its roots in the 8th century BCE, poet Hesiod mentions the names of Clio, Euterpe, Thalia, Melpomene, Terpsichore, Erato, Polymnia, Polychaemia, Urania, and Calliope, their chief. It is not so much a question of cult as it is of systemization of mythology. Zeus was their father and Mnemosyne or Memory their mother. Even Will Hesiod list was eventually accepted as canonical. It wasn't the only one at Delphi and Sicyon. There were only three muses, one of whom at Sicyon went by the whimsical name Polymathia or much learning. Clio is roughly the proclaimer, Euterpe the well-pleasing, Thalia the blossoming and luxuriant, Melpomene the songstress, Erato the lovely, Polymnia the sea of many hymns, Urania the heavenly, and Calliope the sea of the beautiful voice. All of the Hesiodic names are notable. It is hardly strange that Hesiod termed one of his nine delighting in the dance, Terpsichore, as dance was a common accompaniment to music. Through the Muses are frequently described as single, they are also frequently mentioned as the mothers of well-known sons, including Orpheus, Rhesus, Eumolpus, and other figures who are associated in some way with poetry and song. Thrace and its inverns, or both. Put another way, every one of their mythologies is incidental, connected to the original, ill-defined group of for whether reason. As a result, these little stories lack coherence. For instance, different authors refer to Terpeus as the mother of multiple men, and uh, Orpheus is typically identified as the son of Calliope, but sometimes optionally of Polymnia. Polymnia. Significance of Muses. In ancient mythology, the Muses were venerated in ancient mythology as important cultural and spiritual figures who invented, who inspired spiritual and directly musicians, poets, artists, and intellectuals. The goddess of memory, Memonos, and the monarch of the gods, Zeus, were thought to be the parents of the muses. They were regarded as heavenly inspiration sources endowed with the ability to bestow on mortals the gifts of creativity and artistic ability. Because of this heavenly link, artists were able to create works that were beyond human comprehension and were attributed to a higher transcendent sources. Every muse oversaw a distinct area of human innovation. For example, Euterpe represent music, Euterpe represent Caliper represent epic poetry, Erato represent lyric, represent in ancient mythology, represent music, Calliope, Calliope represent epic poetry, Erato represented lyric and love poetry, and so on. The muses represent music, the diversity of arts and science. Muses represent diversity of the arts and sciences and the depth of Greek culture and the knowledge by identifying with certain fields. The Greek perception of their cultural identity and ancestry was strengthened by their belief in the muses. Poets and musicians sought approval and validation from the divine by calling upon the muses in their artistic undertaking, which helped them to align their works with the cultural standards of excellence, harmony, and beauty. Beyond serving as an exception for art, muses contributed the muses contributed to philosophical discussion and education. The muses were called upon by philosophers and academics to represent the quest for wisdom and knowledge, seeing them as aids in the pursuit of knowledge. And the side, the idea of muses was prevalent in classical Greek literature and mythology. It can be seen in epic poems such as Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, where authors summoned the muses at the start of their composition to obtain inspiration and divine favor. The concept of muses was not limited to ancient Greece. It persisted in influencing countries and civilization afterward. Similar roles and characteristics were maintained by the Camenia, the Roman counterpart of the muses, indicating the endeavor appeal of these supernatural creatures in various communities. In conclusion, muses in Greek mythology symbolized more than just inspiration. Conclusion is muses in Greek just symbolize more than just instruments. They were the embodiment of the intellectual, spiritual, and cultural goals of that day. Their influences went beyond artistic innovation to include more expansive educational and philosophical principles, creating a long-lasting mark on Western cultural heritage. Evolution Muses and two modern interpretations. The development of muses from their mythological roots in antiquity to contemporary interpretation is a reflection of changes in intellectual, artistic, and cultural viewpoints across time. According to ancient mythology, the muses were thought of as celestial creatures, daughters of Zeus, who personally inspired and ancient intellectuals and artists. However, the idea of muses changed into more symbolic and abstract, abstract representing, and societies grew away from polytheistic beliefs. Muses were no longer seen as actual physical beings, but rather as metaphorical sources of inspiration. Resurgence of interest in classical Greek and Roman art and literature occurred throughout the Renaissance. The notion of muses as emblematic figures who fostered innovation and high artistic achievement was revived by this Renaissance. In their works, writers and artists like Michelangelo and Shakespeare evoked muses as a symbol of their quest for intellectual and artistic excellence. The Romantic movement of the 18th and 19th century placed a strong emphasis on the idea of that each artist is a unique genius who finds inspiration inside. During this time, there was a change in the perception of muses from being external beings to internal sources of inspiration derived from feelings, individual experiences, and the natural world. Artists did not follow classical principles. Instead, they tried to convey their own distinct vision. With the rise of modernism, postmodernism in the 20th and 21st centuries, the idea of muses continues to change in favor of abstraction and experimentation. Modernist artists frequently abandoned conventional ideas of inspiration. Muses come to represent dream, the subconscious, and the illogical parts of creativity. Use of muses changed along with societal attitudes toward gender and cultural diversity. The idea grew beyond its Western roots to incorporate voices and opinions from other cultures. The exploration of muses in connection to gender identity, sexuality, race, and ethnicity by writers and artists reflected greater cultural shifts as well as the goal of inclusivity in artistic expression. Technological development in the digital age have further changed the idea of muses. A vast array of sources such as visual communities, global cultures, and digital media serve as inspiration for musicians and artists. Through the internet, creativity has become more accessible, enabling people to interact with and contribute to the development of artistic inspiration from all over the world. The way that muses have evolved into contemporary interpretation demonstrates the dynamic interaction that exists between societal shifts, intellectual philosophies, creative movement, and cultural traditions in a cultural environment that is ever changing. Muses from mythological creatures from antiquity to abstract representatives of creativity and diversity continue to inspire and stimulate artistic inquiry. How does Hill argue that muses contribute to creative process of musicians and composers? Provide examples from both classical and contemporary music. In the Machine, John Thornhill makes the case that muses which act as sources of inspiration and directors for artistic expression have a major creative impact on musicians and composers. Bach frequently claimed that the Christian religion or supernatural forces were the inspiration for his compositions. The Brandenburg Concertos and the Well-Tempered Clavier, two of his compositions, are regarded as masterpieces that demonstrate a profound spiritual and creative inspiration. Beethoven used Frederick Schiller's poem "Ode to Joy" as inspiration for his symphony No. 9. Number 9. Choral Symphony. The symphony is not just a masterwork of music symphony, but also evidence of Beethoven's conviction that art has the ability to arouse feelings and transcend transcend human experience. Lennon and Paul McCartney songwriting collaboration and is frequently cited as a contemporary instance of artistic inspiration, comparable to the Muse famous songs like Yesterday and Hey Jude. And Hey Jude, which continue to inspire future generations of musicians, are the result of their partnership. Beyond is talked about how beyond social issues, her cultural background and her own actions all influence her modern pop songs. Influenced modern pop songs. For instance, Lemonade, her highly personal album, explores themes of identity, resiliency, and empowerment. According to Hill's argument, muses, whether they be interpreted literally or metaphorically, are essential for inspiring creativity and directing the creative process. They give musicians and composers a deeper sense of meaning, emotional nuance, and thematic focus that enhances their work. The idea of muses continue to shape and affect the creative landscape of music across genres and eras, whether it is derived from personal experience and societal challenges in modern music or from mythology and spirituality in classical music. According to Hill, what role music play in shaping emotional and spiritual dimension of music compositions? According to John Thornhill, in the Muse in the Missing, muses serve as catalysts for profound artistic expression. For which helps to shape the emotional and spiritual aspects of musical works. Muses are said to be inspirational sources that spark the creative process. That they encourage musicians and composers to explore emotional landscapes by referencing spiritual beliefs, cultural backgrounds, as or personal experience. Composing with a strong emotional resonance and profound spiritual depth are frequently the result of this inspiration. According to Hill, muses let people connect to something bigger than the ordinary or material world. They provide composers a feeling of transcendence that enables them to incorporate feeling and spiritual understanding into their works. Listeners may respond powerfully to this connection, which can lead to a shared feeling of spiritual and emotional elevation. Musical creation are individual with symbolic meaning by the muses. They could stand for ideas, gods, or realities that songwriters hope to convey or explore via their works of music. Composers and add layers of emotional and spiritual importance to their works by calling upon muses, which profoundly connects with audiences. Hill agrees that the function of muses changes depending on historical and cultural circumstances. While modern versions of muses may be more abstract or symbolic, ancient muses were personified as goddesses influencing particular arts. The fundamental purpose is still the same. Through music, it encourages composers to access spiritual and emotional realms beyond personal experience. Hill's viewpoint emphasizes how music can influence machine influencing works that have an emotional and spiritual impact on both composers and listeners. Composers can access a realm of inspiration through calling upon users, which enhances their artistic expression and adds additional levels of meaning and significance to their music. Compare and contrast Hill's view on music with other theories. The perspective differ aligned established theories in musicology and cultural studies. It is possible to compare and contrast John Thornton's notions of artistic inspiration from musicology and cultural studies with other theories of the muse in music, stated in The Muse in the Machine. According to Hill, the muse serves as conduct for spiritual or heavenly inspiration, connecting artists to something more than themselves. This fits well with conventional musicological beliefs, such as those found in discussions of the Muses of classical Greek mythology which ascribe creative inspiration to supernatural or metaphysical origins. In contrast, certain contemporary stories in the field of cultural studies may place a greater emphasis on psychological social processes or as inspiration. These ideals may highlight the impact of cultural context, individual experiences, or group identity on artistic creativity, downplaying on or reinterpreting the spiritual dimensions that Hill emphasized. In addition to being real entities, Hill views muses as metaphorical characters that stand for the artistic ideal for creative drive. This is consistent with cultural studies symbolic readings of muses, which view them as cultural creations that mirror larger societal values and goals. On the other hand, musicology may investigate how the idea of muses has historically developed within certain musical traditions or genres, looking at how these symbols have been modified and reinterpreted over time to fit shifting artistic practices and cultural settings. He highlights the spiritual and emotional aspects of muses' influence on musical works. According to his viewpoint, muses exhibit strong emotional reactions and make it easier to connect with a more profound spiritual truths. Similar topics of spiritual significance and emotional depth in artistic expression may be explored by modern psychological theories and creativity instead of openly attributing these experiences to outside muses or divine inspiration. They can explain them in terms of cognitive process, emotional intelligence, or subconscious influence. He'll recognize the concept of the muse cultural diversity and historical development is illustrating how it has been adopted to various communities and artistic traditions. His viewpoint accepts the variety of ways that muses are interpreted and portrayed in many worldwide cultural contexts. The importance of cultural diversity and the interaction of power dynamics in influencing artistic expression are frequently emphasized in ideas related to cultural studies. They may argue for inclusive depictions of muses that reflect a range of cultural viewpoints and identities, criticizing conventional readings as Eurocentric or inclusive. In conclusion, Hill's perspective on muse in music provide a comprehensive examination emotional, spiritual, and cultural aspects as they also confirm the two conventional ideas of divine inspiration and divine and symbolic representation. His viewpoint in contrasted with theories from cultural studies and musicology to show the various ways in which creative expression may be understood from socio-cultural context and psychological processes to supernatural or metaphysical causes. Every viewpoint depends on comprehension of the various ways that muses and other sources of inspiration influence artistic creativity throughout history and across cultural boundaries. What is the primary role of muses according to John Thornhill? To compose music themselves, to inspire and guide composers and musicians, to critique musical compositions, to perform music publicly. Zeus, Greek mythology muses believed to daughter of which god? Zeus. How does evolution of muses in modern fiction? They have become more abstract and metaphorical. According to Hill, what music contribute to emotional and social natural contribution? They stimulate profound artistic expression. What perspective does Hill adopt regarding the cultural and historical concept of muses? He acknowledges their diversity in evolution. Not a music is simply in machine. They inspire and guide composer, expression and music in Greek mythology. The muses, music and poetry, the muses. In Hill's view, what is the concept of muses in modern times compared to ancient times? These Abstract source of impression. Muses have emotional dimension of musical composition. They stimulate profound artistic expression. How does suggest muses contribute to spiritual expression? By fostering a connection to a deeper truth and meanings. The important questions is the innovation editor Financial Times. Deep Blue. The important question. The latest fashion with AI is that reframes the internal debate about us means in explain briefly. Thank you and meet you in the next class.